We've learned a lot. Even in a relatively short period of time, we've assigned each student that student identifier. We know about what I call lost transfers. Let me tell you how many students finish 8th grade and never show up in 9th grade. And you know what many of these communities look like. We are now holding our schools accountable. That's going to be a major benefit of having our student identifier. Let me give you a couple of examples of where that other 10% plus students are. Students that aren't considered dropout and yet are not considered graduates. We can tell now with precision how many students have successfully completed all of their coursework in high school and yet not passed the California High School Exit Exam. They are neither a dropout nor are they a graduate. And regrettably, they may not be enrolled in school, although that doesn't mean they won't be able to obtain that diploma. They simply they can continue to come back to school and take the high school exit exam as many times as they want. And the legislature and this governor have been generous in more money for additional administrations of the exam, and more importantly, for supplemental instruction for students that have yet to pass the high school exit exam. What if a student decides to take the GED test and then perhaps goes directly into his or her chosen career? Is that a dropout or is that a graduate? Well, it's neither. That's in that 10% category. What if you're a special ed student? You have met all of your requirements by IEP, but not a sufficient number of credits or not passed the high school exit exam. That would fall into that category as well. So these are all examples of students that we need to continue to follow and help them with their transitions. These categories, and there are others, would be considered neither dropout nor a graduate. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I've made closing the achievement gap our top priority. And I haven't mentioned the achievement gap since I spoke to the School Boards Association next door, about 2,500 of them, about a half hour ago. And the achievement gap, it's real, it's stark, it's persistent, and must be addressed. These are the subgroups that are growing the fastest, and we need to make the economic argument for this state. If we're going to have that well-skilled, well-educated, analytical, problem-solving workforce, it's got to come from these students that comprise these growing subgroups for us. But let me give you to further elaborate, some disturbing statistics that we now have access to. What's the dropout rate for a couple of our subgroups? The African American subgroup in California. Last year, 36.2%. Too high. Better than 1 out of 3 African American students dropping out. Our Latino students, which comprise 48% of the student population, Latino dropout rate last year, 27.4%. Now, that's not news. That's not perhaps for some of us, but our new student identifier system gives us a clearer picture of why many of these students are dropping out. The transfer problem is real. It's a significant loss of students when you finish 8th grade and they never make it to 9th grade. Let me give you a very specific example, and I'll even name school districts, of how they are in the process today of combating that. In Long Beach, I'm good friends with the superintendent there, Chris Steinhauser. So many students that finished 8th grade told him they were going to transfer to a nearby district, maybe Compton, maybe pick a district, LA, and then they never show up. Well, there was some question that the student then is going to be considered a dropout. Who gets that dropout? Is it the high school from which the student maybe never attended but said he or she was going, or is it the middle school? We made the policy decision it'll be the middle school. So that middle school, if it's a student in 8th grade Long Beach, my friend, the superintendent there, Chris, is actually picking up the telephone and calling other superintendents and saying, this kid said he's coming. Why isn't he there? Why is the state telling me this kid is considered a dropout? That's the accountability that we want. That's the type of tracking system that we want. So many students, when they move, the mobile population, there's a great study on this topic, the mobility, out of the Gevert School of Education, John, down at UC Santa Barbara, about how when students move, much more likely to never show up at a school. And we know many students will transfer to a private school or transfer to a home school. And we now have ways to try to see and get our arms around those numbers. This new information really does provide us with a much more accurate portrayal of where these students are going and gives us a much better understanding of how we can help. So we clearly need to utilize this data. We need to be smart. We need to target resources. And perhaps most importantly is provide the interventions, provide the systems and that support network so that we can significantly reduce the dropout rate. We need to make sure that we're making decisions based upon data, based upon research, based upon this report, and not just on someone's hunch or theory or philosophy. The data really does confirm that transitions is a very difficult time for many of our students, particularly from middle school to high school, and particularly when students change schools. So we really need to address these areas. As I mentioned, I'm a strong believer in accountability, and I believe this new tracking system will help hold the feet to the fire of our system, of our teachers, our principals, our para-educators, school board members, clearly me, and all of us. This is an opportunity for us to form new partnerships with law enforcement, with a faith-based community, new partnerships with business and labor, with our parents, and yes, with our school attendance review boards as well. And we need to do a better job earlier of identifying those students that are more likely to be susceptible to dropping out of school at an earlier age. We cannot wait till a student's a senior to try to get that student more help to pass the high school exit exam. So as I close, I'd just like to leave you with a couple of other points. Keep in mind that the data and the statistics that I cite we compile from school districts. It's fluid, it's evolving, and the districts are continuing to review and continuing to update and correct their data. I have been seeking additional funding from the state to try to get more professional development, more training for many of the folks involved in this reporting, so we're absolutely certain we have uniform application for these numbers. Also, a word of caution. I want to urge you to be careful in your comparisons of the data from our regular comprehensive high schools and continuation or alternative schools. I mean, I taught in both. I taught at a continuation school when I first got started, and I know firsthand the many challenges. These students, simply by definition, are going to be more likely to drop out. Some schools even report in excess of 100% dropout rate, which is impossible, but because of the compilation, that can happen. So be careful in comparing and using an example one of our alternative or continuation schools. Overall, I'm pleased that finally, after probably 3 decades of work, we have our student identifier up and running. It really will help us, I believe, address a major policy concern of this state, and that is far too much lost potential. I just told the group next door, 2,500 strong, the most important capital we have in this state is human capital, and that's the investment that we have to make. So I'm going to continue to seek additional funding so that we can train the staff for their reporting and continue to seek additional funding for intervention programs to help better prepare our students where they are beginning to fall behind. And then lastly, I want to leave you with this thought. I really believe that this system is just the beginning. We need to have, and we have already begun planning for an even more robust data collection system. I have talked to the governor and part of the legislative leadership to see if we can develop a roadmap for a system that really links preschool so that these student identifier numbers can be assigned. Certainly we have the authority today for state preschool operations, and continue with your number through community college, which I'm a product of, the CSU system and the UC system as well. And that will help us with our social services and continue to follow and help these folks into the workforce. I know that we will be able to meet the unique needs of these students with more information, and it will help us reduce the dropout rate and at the same time improve the academic achievement of all of our students. I'm absolutely convinced if we continue to work hard, we continue to work smart, and if we continue to work together, the best is yet to come for California. Then and only then, the best is yet to come for our country. Thank you very, very much. Let me come by and share a few ideas. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Great to see you. Thank you.